In this video we will discuss the optical fiber dispersion. In optics, dispersion is the phenomenon in which the phase velocity of a wave depends on its frequency. Media having such a property are termed dispersive media. The most familiar example of dispersion is probably a rainbow, in which dispersion causes the spatial separation of a white light into components of different wavelengths, different colors. However, dispersion also has an effect in many other circumstances. For example, it causes pulses to spread in optical fibers, degrading signals over long distances. Also, a cancellation between dispersion and nonlinear effects leads to soliton waves. Dispersion is most often described for light waves, but it may occur for any kind of wave that interacts with a medium or passes through an inhomogeneous geometry, for example a waveguide, such as sound waves. Dispersion is sometimes called chromatic dispersion to emphasize its wavelength-dependent nature. Types of optical fiber dispersion: chromatic dispersion, modal dispersion, and the material dispersion. Chromatic dispersion results from the spectral width of the emitter. The spectral width determines the number of different wavelengths that are emitted from the LED or laser. The smaller the spectral width, the fewer the number of wavelengths that are emitted. Because longer wavelengths travel faster than shorter wavelengths, higher frequencies, these longer wavelengths will arrive at the end of the fiber ahead of the shorter ones, spreading out the signal. One way to decrease chromatic dispersion is to narrow the spectral width of the transmitter. Lasers, for example, have a more narrow spectral width than LEDs. A monochromatic laser emits only one wavelength and therefore, does not contribute to chromatic dispersion. Modal dispersion deals with the path, mode, of each light ray. As mentioned above, most transmitters emit many different modes. Some of these light rays will travel straight through the center of the fiber, axial mode, while others will repeatedly bounce off the cladding/core boundary to zigzag their way along the waveguide, as illustrated below. The modes that enter at sharp angles are called high-order modes. These modes take much longer to travel through the fiber than the low-order modes and therefore contribute to modal dispersion. One way to reduce modal dispersion is to use graded index fiber. Unlike the two distinct materials in a step index fiber, the graded index fiber's cladding is doped so that the refractive index gradually decreases over many layers. The corresponding cross-sections of the fiber types are shown below. With a graded index fiber, the light follows a more curved path. The higher-order modes spend most of the time traveling in the lower index cladding layers near the outside of the fiber. These lower index core layers allow the light to travel faster than in the higher index center layers. Therefore, their higher velocity compensates for the longer paths of these high-order modes. A good waveguide design appreciably reduces modal dispersion. Material dispersion is caused by the wavelength dependence of the refractive index on the fiber core material, while the waveguide dispersion occurs due to dependence of the mode propagation constant on the fiber parameters, core radius, and difference between refractive indexes in fiber core and fiber cladding, and signal wavelength. Material dispersion contributes to group delay distortion, along with waveguide delay distortion, differential mode delay, and multimode group delay spread. Thank you for watching.